All right, guys. I'm excited to have our guest with us this week, Don Ross. Don has been on with us in the past, so go back and check out the Manhood Tribes episode that we did before. We talked about all kinds of cool things like the 5 marks of manhood, which we'll get into a little bit today. But we'll talk about a lot of other stuff and probably I don't know if this is the number one issue that guys face overall, but it's top three for sure. Marriage is another big one for sure. But even if you're married, this can be a problem. Like this can be a major, major problem, and it's a problem that people, guys, don't even realize is a problem for a long, long time until you open your eyes up one day and realize it's a problem. So, anyway, with all that said, Don, welcome.
Yeah, thanks for having me again, Dan. It's exciting to get to be back on the show and excited to talk with you and share some things with your listeners.
Yeah, absolutely. So, for those that haven't listened to the last episode, or at least haven't listened yet, give us just a little brief background on you.
Yeah, so brief story is that I was involved in pastoral ministry for about 20 years in different places, churches, missionary work, different kinds of things. And in all of those settings, whether it was kind of actually my job or not, I tended to gravitate towards working with men and really just loved doing men's ministry and trying to help men in terms of being engaged, growing in their faith, and also just kind of, excelling as a man. I think that was one of the things that I began to notice was that men were seeming to get more and more uncertain about what it actually meant to be a man and how to be able to do that well. And it didn't seem like the church was actually offering a whole lot of answers to that. We had some ideas of what we tended to call biblical masculinity, but it focused very heavily on marriage and fatherhood. And those things are good, they're certainly worth paying attention to. But it also seemed that men were hungry for a little bit more of a deeper answer, like something that isn't just specifically tied to the roles of being husband and father. And so that's where I kind of began to get an itch for saying, what can I do to be able to help men in terms of the way that we connect to each other and how to be able to build a group that's a little more geared towards the felt needs of men, the way that men are wired, and really kind of just this whole question surrounding what does it mean to be a man. So about 7 years ago, I actually started my own men's group that I call now a tribe, and it follows a little different model than probably what the typical men's group at a church would look like. But it has been super successful. It has been probably the most transformative experience I've ever been a part of, and have since gone on to be able to help some other guys start similar groups and seen it have similar effects for them. But I got to a place where I just kind of felt like the Lord was saying, "Hey, this has been your passion all along. This is what I have gifted and built you to do. I want you to do this for other men." And it seemed like the place to be able to do that was in helping churches. And so I actually decided to get out of vocational church ministry and try to build more of like a digital platform to help men and help churches anywhere to be able to sort of implement more of this tribe model in the way that they reach and connect with men. So for the past 4 years, I've been doing digital marketing as my day job, helping me kind of learn some of the skills necessary to implement some of what I'm doing, but also just trying to help men build and grow a tribe as a way to be able to get better at being a man and to grow in their faith and their commitment to Jesus.
So, I think some of the guys might be thinking, well, what's this guy about? Like, is he married? Has he got kids? Like, t tell us a little bit about your
Yeah.
family.
Yeah, a little bit of background there. I'm married 20 plus years. I've got two teenage sons, 18 and 16, which are wild, but also really good and fun ages. I live in the Raleigh, North Carolina area. I've been here for about 8 years. And yeah, like I said, career-wise, been in vocational ministry, bounced around for a while. I was on staff with a college ministry called Cru or Campus Crusade for Christ for a long
Hmm.
time.
Yep.
And then worked in various churches in mostly in the Southeast, was in Colorado for a little bit of time. And like I said, now in the Raleigh area.
So I reference how what we're going to talk about and the tribes you already referenced is the solution or is one of the solutions, but just male loneliness. Guys can be married, can have kids, can have a job, have all kinds of things going on, but they don't have one single person, including their spouse, to talk to,
Yeah.
and don't really even realize that they've been in a doing motion, go, 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 go.
Yeah.
And then when it's not go, 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 it's hang out and
Yeah.
flip the channels or drink the beer or whatever it is. But let
Yeah.
me just click off instead of being on,
Yeah.
and don't really have, one or two guys to hang out with, or even a group of guys that they're, doing life with. And that can
Yeah.
be super, super, super lonely. There's been some local guys lately that either attempted suicide or killed themselves,
Yeah.
which it's not a lately thing, it's an all the time thing.
Right.
You
Yeah.
know,
And getting worse.
yeah, yeah, you hear about it a lot with the military guys, and they talk about 22 a day commit suicide.
Yeah.
Well, expand that out to just men in general. Typically between the ages of 35 and 45, really 38 and 42, guys are killing themselves all the time. And the reason is because they're lonely.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
maybe they're not going to be NBA superstar, and they realize this at 38 to 42. Maybe they're not going to be the CEO of a company. Maybe they're whatever. And like, career's not going the way I want. Marriage has been bad for 10 years,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
whatever other things, whatever other
I,
struggles they have. Yeah.
I think you're bringing up the right idea, and because I think this is a real challenge for men in terms of, I think this is beginning to get into the cultural narrative that there's this real problem with male loneliness. But I think if you talk to most men, the average guy isn't really going to say that he struggles with loneliness, and that's not
No,
because he's
no,
trying to
absolutely they won't.
avoid like being honest about being lonely. It's that he's not actually lonely. At least that's not the feeling that he has. The problem is more of what I would call isolation, that men are isolated. They don't have those, one or two guys that they're close to. They're not necessarily comfortable talking with their spouse about the things that are hard in their lives. And then where it becomes a problem is when some kind of crisis hits in life and things just get beyond what that man knows how to be able to handle. And then that's when the loneliness actually kicks in. That's when he gets to a place of realizing I don't have the resources and the people in my life that I probably need in order to be able to handle this thing, this moment in my life that is bigger than I am. But up to that point, he's been kind of just, clicking along just fine, kind of following just normal rhythms of life. And so loneliness hasn't seemed like a problem because he's not been lonely. He's been just fine, but he's been isolated. And then when life gets hard, that loneliness is where that begins to set in. And that's when he's really at danger of, like we talk about with suicide, even if it doesn't get to that extreme of a place, he's in danger of, all kinds of vices and addictions, turning to things to just kind of be able to numb the pain. He's in danger of blowing up his marriage and his family in one way or another, by making some really bad choices to try to avoid how difficult the rest of life feels. There's danger of going into debt. There's all kinds of things that really happen to a man in that place. And so that's what I'm trying to help prevent is, to be able to say, the issue here is really about isolation. I was listening to a radio show the other morning. I was working out at the gym, and they had the radio on in the background. And there were like, I think there were like three hosts on this radio show. Two of them were guys, and one of them was a lady. And the two guys were kind of chatting, and one of them, I think, was about to have his first kid. And so they were kind of talking about that and back and forth. And the one guy who was older and had kids already is kind of offering to him. He's like, "Hey, man, like if you don't have anybody in your life, like just know if you need some help, feel free to reach out to me. This dad thing can be kind of tough. I'm happy to help." And the guy responded by just saying like, "Yeah, I think I'm good. Thanks." Just this kind of like, I probably don't know what I'm doing, but I'm perfectly content to just, give it a go on my own and try to figure it out by myself. And that's really the crux of the issue is that men kind of have it in our minds that we're supposed to figure out life by ourselves, that the right way to do things is on our own and not needing anybody else's help. And that's such a horrible belief, but it is very prevalent in our culture. And that I think is really what is leading to kind of this crisis of isolation and then the loneliness epidemic that really kind of crops up in its wake. Because when life gets hard, men don't have anybody to turn to.
So let's jump into tribes a little bit. So, okay, cool. I'm on board. Or maybe the guy who does have a little group going, but it either is disbanded or isn't really all that, vibrant. Guys aren't really fired up to come to
Yeah.
whatever the thing is or whatever it is. Like, what are some challenges you've seen and how do you get past some of those and how do you get guys interested in something like this? Just so I
Yeah.
think guys at this point are like, all right, I'm kind of on board.
Tell me
Like,
more. Yeah.
talk to me about this. Yeah.
Right. So, what I would say is that a guy maybe gets to that place where he's saying, okay, yeah, I think I need a little more connection with other men in my life. And if he's a Christian, probably the natural place to be able to address that is let me see if I can get connected to a group in my church. I'll see if I can sign up for a men's group or something like that. And then almost to a man, he signs up for this men's group. He shows up and it's mediocre at best. It's not like there are examples of it going just horribly sideways and horribly wrong. But for the most part, when I talk to guys about their experience with church men's groups, it's just that it's kind of like meh. There's just not a lot of meat to it. For some guys, they get turned off by the idea that it's all it is a Bible study. And studying the Bible certainly is a good thing to do, but guys aren't just looking for a study and homework and more books to read and for it to just be an intellectual thing. Or they get turned off by the fact that they show up and there's actually kind of no structure and no real content, and it sort of devolves into nothing but just sort of like a hangout and sports chat and whatever else. It's just kind of a group of buddies, and I think guys inherently are looking for something more than that. And so, there's all these kinds of different ways that guys have gone about small group experiences, but most of them have really fallen short. And so that's where I began to say, well, how can we do something different? And the tribe model is really meant to try to address that problem. It is meant to say, how can you build the best men's group ever? Like, if you could really imagine what would be the most amazing men's group that you could be a part of, what would that look like and how would you do it? And that's really what tribe is supposed to be about. So when I tell guys to think about tribe, I want them to think about three big ideas. So these are what I call the three pillars of tribe: manhood, camaraderie, and freedom. So those are words that we don't throw around a whole lot. Certainly words that we don't often talk about in a church or a small group Bible study setting. So it takes a little bit of unpacking. So I'll give you just a little bit of explanation on each of those. Manhood is really just about saying, hey, there's a lot of cultural confusion right now in our world around what it means to be a man. So we need to have kind of a common starting point for what does it actually look like to be good at being a man. And by that I don't mean being a good man, which is what the church probably has tended to try to teach us, how to be how to be a moral man. We need to actually kind of go like get the horse in front of the cart on this one and say, what does it actually mean to be a man? And then let's worry about what it means to be a good man. So, in a tribe, we use what are called the five marks of manhood. And you kind of mentioned those earlier, and we talked some about them on the previous episode. So, I won't go into too much detail on all of that today. But I'll just say the five marks of manhood are strength, courage, skill, honor, and allegiance. And those are the things that really, if you can learn to display and exhibit those things, that's what it looks like to be good at being a man. And the great thing is that every man can get better at every one of those things. You're not stuck being unmanly. If you feel like you're not very, strong or there's not a lot of honor in your life, like that's okay. You can get better at all of those things. But that's what it looks like to be a man. That's not going to tell you what it looks like to be a good man, but pretty much anywhere that you find men, you're going to see that cluster of traits. So in a tribe, we talk about the five marks of manhood. We talk about what it looks like to be a man, and we challenge each other in some ways to pursue those things and to grow in terms of being better at being a man. So I know I'm talking a
When I
lot,
hear
so I'll
that
stop there
when I
before
hear
we go
that
to others.
list, I immediately think about, all right, was that Army, Marines? Was that Special Forces? Like, that's pretty much the list that the recruiter uses.
Yeah, right. And I think that's for a reason. Like there's something kind of primal, about our military branches that taps into a little bit of those sort of like foundational instincts and aspects of masculinity, and that's for a reason. It's meant to be appealing in that way. And I think this list of traits, it's not probably not the perfect list. I'm sure somebody could come up with a different list and argue for whatever reason that no, I've got the right list. I'm not interested in the right or the perfect list. But I am interested in saying, yeah, I think these things are commonly displayed in men pretty much everywhere and at all times throughout history. And so, because of that, it's worth pursuing them.
Yeah, absolutely. Like the word allegiance, it's like, well, yeah, if the group's not, well, like if you've got a mediocre group, a mag group, I might not have a lot of allegiance to it
Right.
because it's not vibrant. It's not going somewhere. It's not plugging me in.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll show up.
I had a mentor of mine a while back that used to always say men vote with their feet, which was just his way
Hmm.
of saying like men show up to the things that they actually consider to be valuable in their lives. And if your men's group isn't adding value to the men in the group, they're not going to keep showing up to it. And an intellectual Bible study probably isn't adding enough value to most of the men in the group. And that's, you can call that unfortunate or you can call that heretical. You can say what you want to about that. I just say it's fact. Like it's just, it's just the way that men are wired. Doesn't mean that we shouldn't value studying the scriptures, but it does mean that maybe that's not always the best use of our time in a small group setting as men. And that's okay to be able to say that.
Yeah. So I think that's a good summary, good starting point for what it takes to be a man. Like,
Yeah.
am I up for the challenge? Am I good enough? All that type stuff,
Right.
and what's our cause? What are we working towards?
Yeah.
Do I have honor? And yeah, part of a good man there, the honor, do I live up to
That's
my
right.
word?
Yeah.
That type
Well,
stuff.
it's really kind of like, wait, what are you going to honor? Like there's ways to
Hmm.
honor things that aren't good. And so you can still possess honor, even, if your group is deciding to honor things that are not morally upright. Your group
Yeah,
might still find you
100%.
honorable, but your moral character might not be, all that positive. So it just kind of depends. That's why it's really important to choose a group of men that are going to honor the things that you think should be honored, so that together you're pushing each other towards those kinds of things. And really, honestly, that's kind of what those last two pillars are about: camaraderie and freedom. So camaraderie is really about the idea of building memories and shared history together. So we do that as men very easily and very quickly through things like action and adventure. So men need a group that involves doing things. So a tribe is always going to have some challenges. We do these every month that are mostly geared around those 5 marks of manhood, some things to do, some action oriented kind of stuff. And then we also do some adventures. So like I'd say 2 to 3 times a year, our tribe tries to do something where we just kind of get out of our normal routine and we go spend some time together, just our tribe, doing something that's mostly for fun. It just really needs to be about building shared history and memories together and creating that sense of camaraderie. That is how you build lasting friendships. And it's out of the foundations of those friendships that transformation can really begin to take place. But guys need that. They need that sense of camaraderie. That's how we're wired. And it takes some intentionality to be able to build those things. Most men's groups don't pursue that at all. They just assume that it's going to happen by showing up week to week, and it usually doesn't. So it takes a little more intentionality to build camaraderie. But the last one is about freedom. And this is really the kicker and what makes a tribe really, I think, a transformational experience for those of us who are trying to follow Christ. Which is to say, a men's group should be about helping you get free from all of the things that are holding you back from being the man that God has called and created you to be. So we fight for each other. That's really what freedom is about in a tribe, is to say that we want to help you overcome the obstacles in your life. We want to help you get free where you are not. And so we do that in a few ways, but one of the main ways is through a method that I call chisel, which is really just kind of an acronym for what it looks like to kind of get into the weeds with another man and help figure out, where is God at work in this guy's life? What are the hard things that he's facing right now, and what is God up to in the midst of those things? So when guys get into those kinds of scenarios, we tend to quickly devolve into just quick fixes and advice giving, right?
Yeah,
This is what we
100%.
this is what
You
we
know what
as
you should
guys.
do? You know what you should do with that? I'm just kidding.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's entirely right. Well, and it's okay that that happens. Like men are wired for that. We're wired for solutions. We're wired for action. And so, top of mind for us always is to try to be able to say, well, how do I fix that? And that's a good thing. God has built us that way. We don't need to, like denigrate that in any way, but we do maybe sometimes need to curb it, to kind of pull it back and to say, hey, that's not a bad thing that we're wired that way. But in this situation, that isn't the tool that's needed. So we do have to figure out, okay, well, that's fine if that's not the tool that's needed, but what tools do we need and how do we cultivate that? And so the chisel method is really kind of about that. It's to say the tools that we actually need here are to figure out how to take this man to Jesus and let Jesus offer his counsel, and we be the support system that comes alongside him to help him follow and do whatever it is that Jesus is asking him to do. So the main tool that we use is actually just listening to God. We do a lot of listening prayer in our tribe settings, and we learn how to practice the art of listening together. So, as odd or as strange as it might sound, we do have just kind of like seasons in our tribe meetings where we're quiet and we're just listening. We're trying to listen for the voice of the Holy Spirit. How is he speaking to us? What is he saying about this man and about what this man is facing? And then we just offer those things. Hey, here's what I think God is saying to me about you. And in being able to do that, it is unbelievable to hear the words that God is saying and sharing. And sometimes it's not just words, sometimes it's images or pictures, or a guy gets a sense of something that he offers. And the way that God tends to weave those things together in bringing about like the thing that I think I'm hearing and the thing that this other guy thinks he's hearing, and how we pull those things together. It's this like amazing tapestry that only God can pull together. And we're just left going, okay, wow, he's really up to something in your life. And it seems like this is really what he's doing. That is where the transformation and the power really takes place in a tribe. And it's an unbelievable way of watching God work in a man's life.
Yeah, that sounds great. What else is involved in chisel?
Yeah. So the acronym stands for this. It's choose, identify, share, explore, and listen. So that's kind of what the process looks like. Choose just means you got to choose which guy you're going to chisel for the night. So when we meet as a tribe, we only chisel one guy at a time. So the entire hour and a half, 2 hour meeting, however long we're meeting, is focused on just one man, because we want to really hone in on what's going on with him, and where's God at work. So then we have him identify, that's the I, what is the issue that needs to be focused on? What's going on in his life. That might be a pain point. It might be a joy. It might be he doesn't really know what, but he's just kind of in a funk. I mean, it can be anything. And so he's just kind of naming the target. And then we ask him to share. So that's the S. Tell us everything that you can about that particular thing. Be as honest as possible. In a tribe, we call it getting naked. It is really just about like expose everything that you can about what's going on in this area and help us get a picture of what's going on. We describe it as kind of like if you were a surgeon about to go into an operation, you want to have an MRI or an X-ray or a CT scan or whatever. Like, you want as many images as you can get of what is going on the inside there, so that when you go in to operate, you feel really prepared to be able to bring healing and to bring a lasting solution. And it's really the same way for us, is that, hey, we're about to go to battle for you. We're about to fight for your freedom. But in order to be able to do that, we really need to have a good idea of everything that's going on. So when you're sharing, we want to know the whole picture. Like, don't pull any punches, no holds barred. We need to know what all is going on there, even if it's hard to share, maybe even if it's some things that you've not shared with anybody else. This is the place and the safe place to be able to do that. So we talk through all of those kinds of things. We'll ask questions about like, when has this been an issue in your life in the past? Or how have you seen this show up in other relationships? Or, what effect is this having on the other people around you? Or, what other aspects of your life are being affected by this? So we ask all kinds of questions. And that really gets us more into the explore phase, which is to say, now it's kind of the tribe's turn to ask a lot of questions and to figure out, okay, you've given us the picture that you're aware of. Let's see if we can ask some more questions, get even better idea of what all's going on. help us to get clear in our minds, what's happening here, and to get a better idea of maybe where God is at work, so that we start to kind of see some activity of what's happening. So, with all of that put together, then that's when we enter into that phase of listening. So that's the last letter, L. And that's where it gets hard, because with all of that information, again, as I said before, what guys want to do is that they want to come up with a plan. They want to come up with oh, okay, I think I know what you should do. I think I know what you should try here. And so that's where we just really have to say, hey, that's a tool. That's a familiar tool. That's not the tool that we're going to use in this chiseling session. What we're going to use is listening. And so we go to God in prayer. We listen for him to speak, and we try to let him take all that we have learned and speak to that and give the man something that he has to say to that man. So it's a beautiful process. It's intense. It kind of feels like iron sharpening iron. It can get heated at times. It can definitely get emotional at times. It's an intense process, but it is radically transformational. And so this is why guys keep coming back to a tribe, is because they see real change starting to happen in each other's lives, in their life personally, but they also begin to see like, hey, I'm making a difference in these other guys' lives as well. I'm chiseling them. I'm offering some things that are actually producing results in their life, that are actually seeing real change begin to happen. And this means something. We talked about adding value. Like, this is adding real value to my life, and I'm adding real value to other men's lives. Why would I not keep coming back to that? This is what men are looking for in that kind of group setting.
Yeah, we want to be a part of something. And so in that chisel process, we literally get to be a part of something,
That's right. Yeah.
open forum for you to pray, listen, and then also ask questions, give feedback, that type thing. So that's really, really cool to not only allow people to be involved, but whoever's facilitating that can literally look at somebody like, hey, what are you thinking, Don?
Yeah. Exactly.
Hey, man,
Exactly.
I saw you had your head down. Uh, I
Yeah.
don't want
What's
to
going
talk.
on there?
Hey,
Yeah.
I get it,
Yeah.
but open your mouth.
Yeah. And so that's where, again, it just kind of goes back to being geared towards the way that men are wired. Men are wired towards action. And so instead of it just being focused on, this is a place where you're going to come and study and you're going to learn. No, this is a place where you're going to come and you're going to fight. You're going to fight for your brothers. You're going to offer something of yourself. There's a little bit of, metaphorical, but a little bit of blood, sweat, and tears that's going to be left on the field tonight as we go to work and actually do some things that are going to help this man gain some freedom. That's motivating. That's motivating for men. It begins to feel like when I show up, things get done, and that's the way that's how men are wired. That's what we want to do. That's what we want our group experience to feel like.
Give me an example of one of the chisel topics that somebody's used. Just
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'll give you one from our group that's been kind of within the past couple years that we've come around to a few times, and that's just been in the area of marriage. So we've had one guy in our group who has been kind of wrestling on and off with his marriage for a few years now, and even at one point things got really rough with his wife, where she actually asked him to move out of the house, that she was ready for a separation, and that things just needed to come to an end. So we spent some time chiseling that, and we actually, some of what we had done with that man early on in the chisel process was like, hey, let's look at what's going on with you. Like, what can you control? What's happening here with you? Like, you can't control your wife, but you can control yourself. So let's see where God is at work in your life, and not just about like, what's going wrong with her or what things is she mishandling. But when it got to this place of the separation, we began to ask some questions of, okay, what can you be doing to engage with your wife around this whole issue? Like, it seems like you've addressed some of the things that you need to address. Maybe there's still some things going on for her. And it became clear in that chiseling process as we listened to what he had to share, and then we asked him questions in that exploration phase, and we listened to Jesus that yeah, it seemed like what Jesus was saying was that there were some spiritual things going on in her life that weren't his responsibility, but that he did need to stand strong in the midst of. And so as we moved out of that chisel time, what became really clear was like he actually needed to say no to his wife's request for him to move out. That there was nothing forcing him to. There was nothing he had done to dishonor dishonor or to, break the marriage. There was no unfaithfulness that was going on there. And so what he needed to do, at least according to Jesus, was he just needed to stay. He needed to stay put. He needed to love and honor his wife and continue to be faithful, even though it might meant that things were going to be a little rocky and his marriage was going to feel a little isolated. But over time, what happened is that she began to see a different side of him. And I think really what was going on is that God was at work in her life in a way that none of us were really aware of. And there was no reason that we needed to be. But what we did need to be aware of was, what does this man need to do about it in this season? And all God was saying was, you just need to stay put. And so he did. And he continued to love his wife. He continued to pray for her, and he continued to be faithful to her and to just show up as a husband and as a dad. And something began to soften and to shift in her as she watched him do that, as she watched him say, no, I'm actually not going to leave my family. I'm going to stay put. I'll try to honor you in every way that I can. And your request for some distance and some time to yourself. But I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. And slowly but surely, after a few months, actually, they reconciled in some really good ways, and in ways that have led to their marriage actually becoming healthier and stronger. God seems to continue to be at work in his wife's life. She is now kind of looking at, the things that have made a difference for him, including this tribe, and I think God is beginning to stir something in her that's saying, I don't really have anything like that in my life either. I don't have that kind of network of friendships with other women. And I think I'm really lacking because I don't. And so it's just been amazing to see kind of what that example of witness that he's been able to achieve in his wife's life because he just listened. He took time through the tribe to listen and to hear that what God was saying was to stay put. And that we as a tribe took time to listen as well, that we didn't jump to, oh man, I think you need to go get a lawyer. And like, I know this lawyer, here's who you can go
Yeah.
talk to. And here's how you need to handle it. It wasn't just about, let's give this dude our best advice. It was, let's go to Jesus and see what he has to say about this. And what he had to say was different than probably what any of us would have come up with. But it led to something really, really radical and amazing. And yeah, that's the kind of thing, that's probably an extreme example, but that's the kind of thing that we see happen all the time in our group. And it really is, it's fun and glorious to get to be a part of.
So what I heard from that, I'm totally drawn in, and I'm like, all right, I want to help this guy. I want to
Yeah.
whatever. I want to help this guy help other guy. I want to help this. All this. So totally sucked into that story, and I thought about the 5 marks of manhood. I'm like, yeah, that required strength.
Yeah.
And she asked me to leave, so I'm a jerk if I stay at home. No, you're not. No, you're
Right.
not.
Yeah. Yeah,
No,
and that took tremendous courage on his part, to go back to his wife and to say, "Hey, I'm not going anywhere. Like I know you asked me to, but the answer is no. I'm not going to go anywhere." That took tremendous courage on his part, probably more courage than he had by himself. But because he had a group of brothers around him, and that we were all confident that, hey, this is what we heard Jesus say to you, and that he was confident of that as well, it gave him the courage to be able to do something that he probably would not have ever done on his own.
and like in the Bible, it talks about all the time how we're not supposed to move certain times. We're supposed to be a rock. We're supposed
Yeah,
to, um, you know, listen to him. And in that case, we're always supposed to love our wife. And one of the loving things to do in that case was to stay planted, to stand
yeah,
firm, to stand strong, uh, be a man. So a lot of
yeah,
times our wives can test us and want to see if we're strong, want to see if
yeah,
we have conviction in ourselves, if we know who we are as a man. And if we don't, we're movable, we're
yeah,
flimsy, and our wives
yeah.
don't like that.
Right. That's right. Yeah.
Flip side is
Whether
we're gonna
whether they'll
attack you with
admit it or
toxic.
not.
The world's gonna attack us with toxic masculinity, and
Yeah.
you're a jerk because you didn't move out. Well,
Yeah.
it's all lies, and it's not true.
Yeah. Yeah,
Depending on
whether
your
they will admit
attitude
it
and
or not, our
yeah,
wives want us to be men. They want us at some level. It might be a subconscious level for them, but our wives really do want us to be men. They need us to be men. That's how God designed them. We need them to be women. And that it's a really excuse me, it's a really important part of how we complement each other. And that's why, a tribe that's helping each other be men, get better at being men is really, really necessary just because we don't have that at any other place in our culture right now. So especially for church men, learning how to be able to do this for each other is really essential.
So one of the reasons why I asked you about that, a specific example was just how common the problems are.
Yeah.
Marriage problems. Yep, got it. Oh,
Yep.
somebody asked somebody to move out. Got it. Yeah, seen
Hmm.
that one.
Yep.
Um, what was maybe an issue with him when you guys chiseled him on himself?
Yeah, that's good. Without giving away too many details
Yeah,
of
yeah.
his
I
story,
don't
I
want to
mean,
get, name and address and all that
nobody
stuff.
knows
And,
who he is,
yeah, right.
but yeah, just being honest about him, I think it would be fair to say he was unintentionally distant from his wife. So, a little non-communicative and frustrated with his wife that she wanted more from him in that area in particular. So this is a guy who just tends to be a little more naturally quiet, doesn't talk as much, doesn't offer much in the way of thoughts, feelings, just kind of processing through his day. He tends to be much more internal. And that became a real sticking point in their marriage and a place of kind of bitterness for him at times, of just sort of like, why does she want me to be different than I am? And that's maybe a little more of like my words of, kind of how I'm
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
would be seeing
100%.
that.
So Emerson Eggers was just on and we talked about that. He's like,
Yeah.
typically women process everything. And he had some scientific examples and different things. And he's like, and men process things internally. We
Yeah.
don't necessarily know how to articulate it. We don't have a need to articulate everything.
Yeah.
We, uh, communicate with clicks and grunts and,
Yep. Yep. Yep.
you know, it's like, you put two women together side by side and they turn towards each other and they start talking. You
Yeah.
put two guys side by side that don't necessarily know each other and, you know, hey, you okay watching this?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I'm good.
That's right. And I think it needs to be said that that's not the only way that women communicate, and it's not the only way that men communicate, right? Both men and women are capable of deep conversation, but both of us have to get there, and we get there in different ways. Women tend to get there by starting at very active social conversation, right? Men typically are not very active in social conversation, and that includes with our wives. So it just takes something different. That's also why the average church group is hard for men. It's because it is built around intentional social conversation. It's not built around action. Men tend to get to deep conversation through action, and that's why this model I think is a little more geared towards the way that men work and the way that we kind of naturally communicate with each other.
Yes, yeah, 100%. So to drill down on that a little bit more, we know who we are, or we got a general idea of who we are. So as an individual guy, and then as guys in general, we know what that's about. Women, same basis point. They get married, they know they're social, they're communicative. Well, all people are like this, is how we can think.
Uh-huh.
And then when we seek first to understand another person, another group, when we pause and go, huh, they're not wired that way.
Yeah.
That's not in their nature. They aren't necessarily skilled in this way that I am, and I'm projecting all this on the other person and my expectations and all these different things. Like, huh, all right. And same with, guys. That's a big problem for us is expecting things from our wives and
Yeah.
like, well, they're not men.
You're right. That's right. Yeah. They're not wired the same, and that's
And,
okay.
and we don't want
Um,
them to be. However,
yeah.
we've got to spend some time understanding and listening and asking questions and caring and intentionally loving our wives every day. Uh,
Yeah.
you had said something about, gosh, I forgot what it was, but it was basically, I'm not going anywhere.
Yeah.
Emerson Eggers says, we literally have to tell our wives that every day.
Yeah.
Not necessarily, I'm not going anywhere, but the assurance of, I'm not going
Right.
anywhere,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
intentionally loving.
Addressing that fear of abandonment, like I'm not going to leave you alone. I am with you. That's a big thing.
It's unbelievable. Once my eyes were open to the fact that women are literally asking that question daily, multiple times.
Yeah.
And it's not like a thought there. It's just he didn't text me.
Yeah.
Ah, he might be leaving.
Right.
What?
Which, for us just feels like ludicrous. Like how in the world would
I
your
had
brain go to
eight
that
hours
place?
of craziness
Yeah.
at work.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. But yes,
Oh,
and that was the same idea with this guy, was really kind of getting him to a place of saying, um, what the chiseling process kind of helped bring out for him was that there was just a skill that he needed to work on. And that skill was not that he needed to talk to his wife more. It was that she needed to feel listened to. And so he needed to work on how to be able to listen to his wife well in the way that they communicated with each other. And that didn't mean that he had to be as talkative as she was. And frankly, she's not all that talkative, so this wasn't as hard. But it did mean that she needed to feel listened to, that he was really present in their conversations and those kinds of things. And so it was mostly just a matter of skill. And the fact that our tribe, regularly worked on listening with God. That was something that we do, every time we get together. I think actually helped him to translate that a little bit of like, hey, if this is
100%.
something that we need to do in our relationship with God, of course it's something that we need to do in our relationship with our wives as well. We need to learn to listen, and that's an important discipline in, every aspect of relationship. So that helped, and I do think that made some difference for him. That was something that he could work on, and not just be bitter at her for expecting things of him that he was unable to provide.
Yeah, so in that one chiseling process, there's 100 guys in the room. There's literally 100 guys learning and getting better also
Yeah.
because these challenges that we have are common. In the Bible,
Right.
it said they're all
Right.
common to man. Like, even though it's not necessarily the exact same thing, there's things in the process that you pick up on and can help you help another man or can help you help yourself,
That's right. Yeah,
So
that's right.
yeah, no, these that is awesome. How do you find the person to be vulnerable?
Uh, w- the guy who's leading the group, which is who we call a chief, we say all the time the chief leads the way, and so the chief needs to be the person who kind of models that vulnerability. And so when we have kind of like a orientation process for tribes, and as you go through the tribe, the chief is the first person to kind of offer, this is what this looks like, this is how you do this. So there's kind of a whole way of learning, like here's how to be vulnerable. It's not just like, hey, we want you to show up and like just share everything. We actually have some steps and some processes and some kind of like not exactly tips and tricks, but just some like here's a method for how to be able to do this, so you're not left feeling like I just got to dump all of my garbage out in front of people, and I'm not sure if I'm quite comfortable doing that or knowing how to do that. So we give you some ways to be able to kind of help make that happen. Again, I call that getting naked. We don't leave you on your own to figure out how to do that. We kind of help you with that process some. But yeah, it just I think by modeling it, and then as guys start to see this brings real transformation, the transformation is attractive. It becomes a way of inviting men into vulnerability and really seeing like, if I'm not fully vulnerable, I'm not going to experience the transformation that guy's experiencing. So like it's time for me to pony up as well. It might be hard, it might be difficult. Maybe I can't get all the way there the first time out the gate. Hey, that's okay. We got as much time together as you want to give to it. We will get to it. Like it'll happen. But I think just again, the transformation is the appeal. As guys start to see the life change take place, they realize the vulnerability is worth it.
There was a guest on in the past named John Edwards, and some of the listeners refer to that episode as the episode where the guest does all the talking. So I maybe said, "What's your background?" And he maybe talked for the next 45 minutes.
Here's this off
But
and running.
But yeah, so it was just like that. It was the vulnerability thing. For some reason, he felt called to bring a group of men together at his church.
Yeah,
And somehow it was, let's pass this hat. Everybody write a sin in that they're, having trouble getting rid of, like
yeah,
recurring, what's your vice?
yeah,
And guys like, I don't really want to do that. No names, no nothing, just, put it in and we're going to ask God to get rid of it. And then he spoke for like 45 minutes, an hour to this group. And he just talked about his alcohol, his cocaine, his pornography, his just let it all out. And the men in the
yeah,
room were like, what in the heck just happened? And this guy who we thought was incredibly successful and had the greatest marriage and turns out it's an absolute train wreck.
yeah,
And then after that, that men's group, had that. memories, and shared history.
Yeah.
So that was the starting point, vulnerability and holy cow. And then other guys were willing to step up and kind of be chiseled. So yeah, I've heard this work in the past.
Yeah. That's great. It's
So that's
fantastic.
awesome that you've got a system and are able to share it with other men. Like
Yeah.
really, really cool. So how would guys dive in and get more information, hear more, see if maybe they could be in your program?
Yeah. Yeah. I have a coaching program for guys who might be interested in building their own tribe. You can go to manhoodtribes.com and get a little more information there about it and schedule a call with me if you want to kind of explore what it would look like to build your own tribe. The easiest way to kind of check out what we do at Manhood Tribes and get some more information about it is I have a free quiz that guys can download that helps do a simple assessment for them called How Manly Are You? You can actually go to howmanlyareyu.com and take the quiz there. It'll help measure you in those 5 marks of manhood that we talked about and give you some ideas on how to grow in those things. But then it'll also get you connected with everything that we do at Manhood Tribes and help you learn a little bit more about how to start your own tribe if that's something that you're interested in. So, howmanlyareyu.com, that's probably the best place to get started.
That's incredible. You're able to buy that one.
Yeah, it's a good domain to have.
That is incredible that you thought of it, came up with it, looked it up, and it was there. I can't
There it
believe that
was. I
one.
know. I
I
was
can't believe
surprised too.
that one's available. How long ago
Yeah.
did you buy that one?
Not that long ago, honestly. It's been less than a year. So I got lucky.
That is unbelievable. That is great. Well, congrats on that, and thank you for
Thanks.
inspiring and helping men and uh, anybody who's been involved with the church men group, especially from the leadership side. They all know that that's a problem, and a lot of
Yeah.
times pastors don't want to. Hey, let me ask you that: how important is it to have the pastor be a part of this?
That's up to the pastor. So I think
How important is it? Can you be successful without the pastors uh, stirring the
if you
pot, making things
if
go?
you're yeah if you're trying to do this at a church level, like you're trying to implement it for like an entire men's ministry or something like that, you obviously are going to need pastoral involvement. I would say if you're just a guy who's leading a group and you want to try to check this out, just go for it. I don't think you don't necessarily need your pastor's approval for that. You're just starting a men's group, unless your church has some real specific rules on what a group needs to look like and you've got to follow their model. Then go talk with your pastor about, hey, I've got this thing I want to try. We can help you with that as well. We actually have some programs that are for churches in particular. So if a church wants to implement the tribe model and as well as some of the other things that we do for men, we do some things for students. We do some men's events kinds of things. And so we've got a program to help churches be able to kind of implement that sort of stuff ministry wide that we could do that as well. But yeah, I would say if you're just a guy, who wants to implement this with his own group, that's where it's good to schedule a call with me and let's talk through it. But just go for it.
That's cool. So yeah, it definitely doesn't need a pastor's involvement. This is something you can do without a pastor and it can
Yeah.
flourish and be great.
Yeah,
So
yeah, we've
that,
designed it so that it really is something that any man can do. You don't have to have a, Bible college degree or, be an expert in anything spiritual. It's just if you're looking for a better men's group experience and want to lead the way, we'll show you how.
yeah. So pastors oftentimes cannot want to get behind men's groups because he's seen them fail in the past.
Yeah.
FYI. So
Yep.
if you're a pastor listening, if you're thinking about going to talk to your pastor and you notice resistance, FYI, you don't need your pastor. You can just start a group on your own.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, sounds good. And it's cool you got both paths outside of a church and inside of a church. So
Yeah.
wherever you're taking this one, guys, Don's got a way to help you and help you get to where you want to go. And as you know, Don, what's a challenge you can throw out for dads to do between this episode and the next episode? Could be easy, could be challenging, but what's something guys can do so they can become better versions of themselves and move more into the person God intended them to be?
Yeah, I think as a dad, one of the things that's just easiest to do is if you've never had a conversation with your son and you've asked him the question, hey, what do you think it means to be a man? Like, it's worth just asking him. It doesn't mean that you're necessarily trying to teach him something yet, but just ask him what he thinks. You might be surprised the answers that you're going to get from him, you will certainly learn a lot about what he is learning and absorbing through the culture just by asking him, what does it mean to be a man? And then if you want to, that does open the door for being able to talk about like those 5 marks of manhood that we discussed today, and to share a little bit more about what those things look like. But I think as a simple getting started, just ask your boy, what do you think it means to be a man?
Yeah, and if you're having that conversation and it turns into a bigger conversation, check out Don's book, How to Be a Man.
Yeah, that's a great place to start.
So, just looking for quick, easy references. Don's got a way of keeping things simple and not getting overly complicated, and it's something easy to read. I like his material. You've already heard him talk, so pretty plain spoken, pretty simple plans, uh, implementable type plans, things that he's
Absolutely.
he's been doing for years and has refined these type things. So, uh,
Yeah, there you go. It's a short book too. I know guys aren't big readers, so it's 100 pages. You can get through it in a few hours and be done with it and never have to think about it again. So, short books, that's what I like. So I figure most guys could go after that as well.
I was thinking for guys with daughters, like, well, what's my challenge? And I
Yeah,
also thought, well, what if I asked my daughters, what do you think it takes to be a man?
yeah,
These boys growing up, what should they be growing into? What's your
yeah.
concept? So I thought about that as a alternative for the guys with daughters. Have you got something else for guys with daughters?
No, I think that's great because, ultimately, you're going to want your daughter to know what to look for in a man, as she thinks about marriage and family at some point in time. And so having an idea of what does, being good at being a man actually look like? And then eventually you'll get to the conversation of what does being a good man look like? But until you know that you've got a man, you're going to have a hard time with the good things regardless. So helping your daughter be able to have a frame of reference for that is also really positive.
I think as a bonus one, have this conversation with our wives too.
Yeah, that gets a little scary
Yeah, yeah.
because she's got some opinions not just about manhood but about you. So that that's a little more of a courage challenge, but it's a good one. That's actually one that we do in the midst of our kind of tribe orientation. If you're building a tribe,
because
that's one of the
because
challenges
who
that
else
we
is
do.
raising our kids besides us?
Right? Yeah.
Like, so if
Right.
we're both on a team and we're trying to bring these kids up in the way they should go,
Yeah,
kind of
it it
important.
it takes some courage to ask your wife that question. It doesn't take as much courage to ask your kids that question, right? They're
No,
not gonna
right.
they're not gonna pass a verdict on you the way that your wife might. But yeah, it's a good one to do too.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on again. I appreciate it a lot. And we didn't talk about F3, but guys, if you're also looking for a tribe, that's an easy one to plug into, f3nation.com. And that'll help you with the memories and the history, and may also be a good starting point for you to start a tribe. So you can
That's right.
easily find guys that way and become a fisher of men and bring some of those guys into your group also if you're looking to build one. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, sounds great. Thanks so much. God bless you, Don. God bless you guys. Go out and be men.
Thanks, Dan. Great to be here with you as always.